www.fullblastradio.com as well as offthecorner.net. I'm Rallo, and this is the F.A.C.T Project. F.A.C.T is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African Centered Thought. And the goal here on the F.A.C.T Project is to convey some facts and some information to members of our community. We have with us today a very special guest, author, educator, activist, scholar, and all around genius, Brother Agyei Tyehimba. Peace and black power, brother.
Peace, good brother. How you be?
I'm good, brother. Thank you for getting on with us today, man. This is much appreciated.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so
feeling
before
is
we...
mutual, brother.
Yeah,
the feeling
yeah.
is mutual. When you gave that very nice introduction, I was like, damn, that's a bad brother he talking about. Who is that?
Who is he talking about, right? Before we get started, though, I want to give a quick shout out to the Boom Bap Kingdom for sending me this dope hat. You can check them out at theboombapkingdom.com. That website again is theboombapkingdom.com, as well as on YouTube. You can see them at The Boom Bap Kingdom on YouTube. If you're into hip hop and you think you know about production, you really haven't seen anything until you've seen The Boom Bap Kingdom. But at any rate, peace, brother Agyei. Thank you for joining us again. You are the creator of I'm saying the name wrong. Harlem Liberation School. I'm thinking of Black Liberation University. Another conversation. Either way,
yeah.
Most of us were not born into this information, so all of us had a journey as it relates to getting to where we are right now. So what was your journey that got you into the knowledge of yourself?
Man, I thank you for that question, man. That's a very important question. For me, I was blessed to have parents, my mother and father. I have to give credit to bringing me into consciousness. My mother, being born in Montgomery, Alabama, was a little girl when Dr. King and the Montgomery Improvement Association was mobilizing. Her mother was a member of Ralph Abernathy's church, who was Dr. King's best friend. So she, met him, knew him as a little girl would know him, not like, when she was fully conscious. So she was an activist in college at Fisk. My father comes in most prominently because he would my mother would read bedtime stories. My father would tell me bedtime stories, some of which he made up, but that had historical merit. So he told me about Nat Turner grinding up glass and putting it in, how the sisters that were the cooks in the white man's houses would grind up glass and put it in the slave master's food. How they had in a slave insurrections. He talked about Malcolm, who he had the privilege of hearing when he was probably my father would have been probably in his 20s. And he heard Malcolm speak several times in Harlem and introduced me to his philosophy, basically to Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. So I would give them the primary credit, and then after them it would be the fact that I grew up in Harlem in the 80s. And so I had the benefit of being able to go to First World Alliance, which basically had some of our baddest, brightest intellectuals like John Henrik Clarke and Dr. Ben and Alvin Van Cernema, Maremba Ani. And I believe Professor Smalls was very popular as well. And then you had Slave Theater in Brooklyn, and you had Alton Maddox, and I had exposure to certain Jegnas when I went to college and became a student activist. So I would say that those three components: the parents, the village of Harlem, and the elders and the Jegnas, the activist intellectuals, and then in college, being the president of our Black Student Union, I brought in a lot of our more revolutionary people and developed relationships with many of them.
Okay, so you mentioned the 1980s. This was an interesting time in New York. I think a lot of us that were on a quest for knowledge of self, we landed in either one of two places. You either got involved with the 5% nation of gods and earths, or you embraced Black nationalism. How much of an impact did the climate of the time have on your thinking?
Oh man, it had a tremendous impact. I just spoke a little bit about it in terms of some of the elder intellectuals and activists. Places like First World Alliance and Slave Theater, but you also had, being in Harlem. That's where Father Allah, Clarence 13X, started the 5% Nation. So you had the Allah School of Meccas right there on 126th Street. And even though I went to high school in the Bronx, I was around the Allah School of Mecca all the time. Many gods went to Cardinal Hayes High School where I went to school. So I was always around the lessons, always, having some very deep conversations, some bills with the brothers. And then you had hip hop. So hip hop, I was a Harlem MC.
Okay.
And so one of the things I think that happened was because the 5% Nation was so big on literacy, reading, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. They were highly literate, and they were prone to look things up, very big on defining terms. So they are basically the foundation of hip hop. The greatest MCs, if you got a top 10 list of MCs and you know what you're talking about, because you got to be real. Some people don't know what they're not informed. If we could be honest, right?
That's true.
But people who are informed, if you got a top 10 list, at least 4, 5 of them, if they're not God body, they're heavily influenced.
Absolutely.
You got
Absolutely.
KRS, Busta Rhymes, you got Jay-Z. Rakim,
Wu-Tang Clan.
Wu-Tang. I mean, you can keep going. So Brand Nubian, Poor Righteous Teachers. So it's just so many.
Yeah, Lakim Shabazz.
Yes, sir. So I would say hip hop in its so-called golden era, being also that the gods had such a heavy influence with hip hop. It also meant that the hip hop material and content was more political, a little bit more engaging in terms of consciousness. And they probably inspired people or groups like X Clan, who I don't know if they were 5% Nation, but they certainly were Pan African and nationalists because Sonny Carson's son was involved with X Clan. So you had those type of things going on too. I also have to mention some of the less mentioned things of that time in the 80s. You had places like, let's say, 125th Street. Now, if you go to 125th Street in Harlem now, it's kind of a shell of its former self. You'll see some high designer clothing stores and a few big market restaurants. But when I was coming up, all along, probably from, I'm going to say 8th Avenue, maybe even 7th Avenue, definitely 8th Avenue, all the way up to maybe 5th Avenue, you had tables and tables of vendors. And these vendors had African fabrics, African jewelry. You also had, hair care products and cosmetic stuff. And you had the book vendors. That's what I love, the book vendors. Because these book vendors, see, if you go now, you see them selling books like Bitch Better Have My Money, She Got a Fatty. And I'm part of my language, family. I just want to make sure you understand what I'm saying, right? Those are the type of titles you see. But in the 80s, they carried classic Black literature. You might walk on 25th and you'll see a brother named Sekou, who's no longer here. God bless him. Rest in peace and power. Selling stuff like The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Classic. Gotta read that. Autobiography of Malcolm X. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Things Fall Apart by our brother from Nigeria. Forget my brother's name right now. But just powerful stuff. Message to the Black Man in America. All the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey.
The ISIS Papers.
Right, the quintessential stuff that at least those, I know people like myself in our 50s, mid 50s, those were the foundational things that we built on in our consciousness. Those were the foundational things that we refer to this day, and those were the foundational texts that are my work emanates from that. My organization, Harlem Liberation School, is a YouTube channel, but it's really an organization that teaches Black political education. And our logo has a H, a red, black, and green HLS, but it has Malcolm X's image kind of in the background. So Malcolm, who comes to me through my father, who comes to me through reading Malcolm X Speaks when I was like 12 or 13 and being completely blown away by it. And me saying, I want to be like this brother, man. I'm not going to be him, but I want to be like him in some way, right? That is in everything I do. So I've written 5 books. That comes from the fact that Malcolm's books so touched me. I said, man, I want to write books too. You know, this idea of political education and having an organization that teaches it specifically to our people, straight out of Malcolm and Brother Garvey. So I would say that 125th Street piece is important because it was like a crossroads, a thoroughfare of the world. It was in Harlem, New York, but you had Nigerians, people from Senegal, you had people from Sierra Leone, you had people from everywhere in the world that converged on this place because you also had famous bookstores. Was African National Memorial Bookstore, my brother Louis Michaud, that Malcolm used to go to, and this elder used to take Malcolm under his wing and feed him books. You know, Richard B. Moore used to have a bookstore over there. I believe it's called Frederick Douglass Book Center. It was just you had the street speakers that would be on ladders and soapboxes right there, 125th and 7th. So it was just it was like a university without walls. Even before I was born. But by the time I came up, that was going on. And then you also had community centers. This is right before Ronald Reagan decimated our communities by taking money away from certain projects, from public libraries and community centers and youth programs. On Friday nights, Saturday nights, me and my boys, we could go right to Drew Hamilton projects. 5-minute walk, pay $2, which a teen could get $2 in the 80s, wasn't a big deal, and go see a talent show. And at that talent show, you might see Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick perform at that talent show. A brother named Eminon, who did human beatbox just like Dougie. You see your local talent. And you had the girls there and the brothers there. And you know what happens with that. And it was fun, innocent fun. Nobody was getting stabbed or shot. Nobody was robbing nobody. And we got to practice our art of me and my boys, my crew, the Top Notch crew, opened up for Biz Markie right over 135th Street, which is, I think, back then it was the YWCA, of course, from the YMCA. I think it's something different now. But we had those opportunities because of hip hop. And we had hip hop because of, though we may not make the connection, the nationalists. If you think about it, those was the people that created the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam. And in the 70s, when the COINTELPRO FBI decimated these groups, what happened was their little cousins, their little nieces, their little nephews, their little brothers, inspired by their fathers and uncles and moms and aunts, tried to take on the mantle themselves. They tried to pick up the pieces and fill the void. Many of them formed street organizations, many of them that became violent. And then you had people who were inspired by people like X and Garvey and Huey P. Took those gangs and tried to bring them back into righteousness, right? So this is why you got the B-boy stance, but that comes from God body.
That's right.
They on and some would say they're Masonic influence, standing on their square. You know, so all of that has interconnections with the politics that came before hip hop, and the political piece is seldom discussed. It's always like they gloss over that, but you have a Clarence 13X because you had a Nation of Islam, right? There was no Nation of Islam, it wouldn't be a Father Allah. So all of this to me comes back to, and you wouldn't have a Nation of Islam if you didn't have a Marcus Garvey, right? So it's all interconnected. So sorry, brother, that's my roundabout way of answering your question.
No, that's fine. That's fine, brother. You talk about a different time. You mentioned X Clan. X Clan was actually involved with the East organization out of Brooklyn. So they were not members of the Nation of Gods and Earths. They were involved with the East organization, which is why on record they always said to the East, my brother, to the East. They talking about the East organization. Are you talking
Brother,
about
where
the
you see.
Absolutely. You talking about the 80s now. The way we spoke was different. You know, the language, the vernacular was different. We spoke recently, and you said the word liberation is not being used the way you think it should. Elaborate on that.
It's not being. I'm arguing that it's in many cases it's not being used at all. Um, there was a time when, and I don't want to sound like I'm 1,000 years old, family watching, because I'm only 55, but you have to understand when you came up in this thing that saved your life. It saved my life, man. I take this very seriously. If I didn't have a First World Alliance, slave theater, my mother and father, the gods and earths, and even some of the uh, more violent brothers around the way that looked out for me, where would I be? I think about it all the time. So I have to go back to that. I have to harken back to the time that gave birth to me, that corrected me, that checked me when I needed it, and that helped me get to where I am. It's You couldn't go to the mosque, and I'm talking about the Nation of Islam mosque. You couldn't go to a parliament for the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths. You couldn't go to a community meeting without hearing somebody talking about liberation, black liberation. Some might connect it to Cuba and make it international. Some might come from the socialist point of view. Some might come from Pan African, but you always heard the word liberation. Keep in mind that I'm old enough to remember when I was a little kid walking with my dad on 125th and seeing a poster with Joanne Chesimard's picture on it.
Wow.
And that, for those who don't know, is Assata Shakur. She was wanted, right? Part of the Black Panther Party, but probably more famously known for being part of the Black Liberation Army, and being accused of shooting an officer, which of course was proven she couldn't have done. But so when you come from a situation where I'm hearing liberation everywhere I go, listen, I grew up in the Baptist church, like most kids did when I was coming up, down the block from where I lived. They had Dr. Ben and John Herrick Clark came every Wednesday to that church at 6 or 7 p.m. and taught about Africa, family. See, this is a different time. This same church with this new minister, they're not talking about black liberation, family. They're talking about the John Lennon looking guy with sandals that they call Jesus. And that they some Never Land. But so, just wrap your mind around having a Baptist preacher that has John Henrik Clark and Dr. Ben coming to the church on Wednesday nights.
That's big.
Just think about that. The older pastor, M.L. Wilson, was a black nationalist who had connections in Africa and talked about that if our religion doesn't connect to black nationalism, it's moot. So it's a different time. That's what I'm trying to get across, right? You got the same buildings, completely different leadership, completely different levels of consciousness. So I have to make the point that in my church, as a little kid, I heard black liberation, right? In my school, even though it wasn't official, because it was mostly black teachers in elementary school, at least, what you saw the afros. We talking about, and I'm in elementary in the 70s, right? Late 70s. Afros. You saw dashikis. You saw medallions, which I would later wear of Africa. Leather, these like round leather joints with Africa on it, right? This was everywhere. Sisters with the earrings. So if you tried to escape it, you would keep running into it wherever you went because it was a national movement. You don't see that today. But we have wonderful people like yourself and many others that are trying to keep that spirit alive. But it's not as prevalent, largely because we don't have a national and international movement. Is one of the reasons. But yeah, that's something I'm definitely not feeling. I hear a lot of stuff. We need safe spaces. I'm triggered. LGBT, but I'm not hearing liberation, and that disturbs me.
Now, the word freedom and liberation was used heavily then. Civil rights movement used it, Black Power movement used it, Black arts movement used it, Black Panther movement used it. But I feel like we never really define what freedom and liberation is. So how would you define that word liberation?
Yeah, I see freedom as being more a state of literal physical mobility, having control over one's body. So, if you're in jail, if you're in prison, quote unquote, you're not free. If you're enslaved on a plantation under under gunpoint, you're not free. You're not free until you take your body and move it away from that territory, and then you're free. Liberation to me is a much bigger concept. Liberation is not just about your physicality. Liberation to me is about you being able to think what you want, you being self governing, or what we might call sovereign, self determination. See, a lot of people hear self determination and they think in Kwanzaa. Um, and I respect Dr. Karenga a lot. I met him quite a few times. But I do think that the Kawaii version, Kawaii is the theory that Kwanzaa comes from, for those who don't know. The Kawaii version of self determination kind of makes it a got the right to kind of dress the way you want, name yourself, and that's part of it. But really, self determination is a political concept that talks about nationhood. You don't talk about self determination separate from nationhood. You know, so to me, liberation for Black people, we have pieces of freedom, we got pieces of mobility, social mobility, economic mobility, but we don't have liberation because we don't have a nation.
Mm,
We don't
okay.
have a nation. We have elements, pieces of a nation in becoming, but not quite yet.
You said the word liberation is not being used the way you heard it used. And you also said the word nationalism is not being used as often as you think it should also. There's a lot of other distractions and a lot of other ideologies being put in front of us to serve as a distraction, but the term nationalism is not being used. So, well, what is your perspective on that?
Yes, well, nationalism, the root word is nation. Again, we come back to that. And this is tricky with nationalism because, like most things in life, it's not like this or that. There's nuance and a lot of gray area, right? So, nationalism is an ideology, and I should say this nationalism has all types of variations. There's Black people who are nationalists, there's white people who are nationalists, there's Irish people who are nationalists. So, you can be a nationalist, it's an ideology, and you can be a nationalist regardless of your ethnicity or race. In our context, though, it means that you look upon yourselves as constituting a nation, or at least that you are a nation, a dormant nation. One of your main goals is to operate as a nation. You argue that we have a unique language, unique culture, unique customs, unique cultural and historical experience that constitutes us as a nation. Now, you got revolutionary nationalists that want to kind of overthrow or dismantle the current government status, take over. They tend to be a little socialist. So you got your Black Panther Party, your Republic of New Africa, some of those organizations. You got cultural nationalists who argue that the main fight is for culture, our values, our priorities, how we dress, how we name ourselves, how we identify. So you got the US organization, you got the Congress of African Peoples that was out in Newark, New Jersey, and you have religious nationalists, so Nation of Islam, um, Moorish Science Temple, right? You have different examples. All of those groups are nationalists, but they manifest nationalism differently. I think one of the key things I hope, as since we're in the 21st century, is that we will be able to kind of meld those variant strands of nationalism into one. so that we have a group like what Garvey was able to accomplish, which is why I think he was so powerful. Garvey took, well, he wasn't revolutionary nationalist much, but he took the cultural, he took the religious and economic, and he put that into one. And it was so powerful for that reason. I think Malcolm was probably our last spokesperson and theorist who was really understanding that yes, you need the economic, you need some spiritual, you need the cultural, because he did call for a cultural revolution. Let's not forget Malcolm said that. But he also understood you need self-defense. You need a military. So it does need to be part revolutionary nationalism, cultural nationalism, and I won't say religious, but it needs to have a moral center and an ethos. So you need spirituality, because in our when we were confronted by Europeans who illegally and unethically came to our territories and snatched us from our motherland, took us to another land, he created psychosis in us. That's not to say I'm not one of these romanticized nationalists. We had problems in Africa. Let's be clear, we're human. So there were problems in Africa before we saw a white man. What I'm saying is when they came, they took the natural organic problems and exacerbated it. Right? So we went from a people that may not cause violence or be violent unless we had to now some of us who just visit violence on each other with no problem. Um, People who wasn't beating our kids and trying to hurt our kids. We was loving our kids and teaching them wisdom, to a people that's damn near abusing our kids and calling that discipline. I mean, so we do have to understand that our contact with them led to some deformities in our character, you know? So I think I may have veered off a little bit, but yeah, nationalism
No,
has
you're good.
so definitely self-defense, self-reliance, that we produce the things we need, self-defense, that we defend ourselves, unashamedly, definitely a race-first sort of philosophy, that we're not going to be out here to love the Palestinians. God, anyone who's struggling against oppression, I support that, support them in theory, but before I can give them all my resources and time, I got to start here. Got to start at home. Malcolm said that as well. Also, did we say there has to be a self-reliance? And I was also talking about economics, cooperative economics, so that we're not becoming like the ruthless, narcissistic, predatory white capitalists. We're not talking about everybody just has their own shop. Your whole life is about protecting what you got. We're talking about a cooperative system where, let's say, for instance, 50 people in your block put in money and create a community supermarket. 50 people own that. 50 families are benefiting, and the whole community benefits from the reduced price you're able to charge them, because you're able to buy food in bulk. So the community benefits, not just my family. So that's what I say cooperative. That's kind of different than the capitalist model we're used to, you know. And the nation part is important. Just think, family watching. You live in a nation. You might be watching from the United States or wherever you're watching from. Just think about, in the course of a week, what are the different things you do? You go to the post office to mail something. You get on a computer. You drive a car. You go to a gas station. You fill it up. Somebody messes with you. You call the police, unfortunately, because they tend to create more problems than they solve. So right there, those are elements of a nation. Protection, right? The ability to send mail, simple things we don't think about. You have radio stations, right? You have all these communications and public transportation. All of those things are part of a nation. You have schools, right? You have places of worship. So a nation is constituted of all of those things, right? But at basis, you want an economy, you want a military, some type of law enforcement, you want government, right? And those things. And I think that's what nationalists are fighting to develop for Black people.
You mentioned you did a video a while back, because now you're talking about different types of nationalism. You did a video not too long ago where you talked about the 6 types of conscious people in the conscious community. Can you explain what those 6 are?
Oh man, how I can remember.
Well, what you do
So
remember?
yes, sir. Well, one of them is the soldier. Souljah, the way Sister Soldier used to spell it. The soldier is the the one that I'm trying my best to be. To me, the highest expression of what we can be on this planet. This is the one that's conscientious, studious, hardworking, creative, empathetic with his brothers and ain't looking down on his brothers and sisters, compassionate, um, and dependable. You call upon them, if they can do it, they will do it. They're not going to tell you something and not show up. And they're the ones that our community depends on when things get bad, when something happens. You call the soldiers in your family, you call the soldiers in the community. Somebody messing with your kid, you ain't gonna call nobody weak and cowardly. You gonna call a soldier. The soldier gonna go and see what's up and handle that. Or if you need money or your bills due, whatever, you call the people that you know are gonna bring it, gonna help. But then we get into the more, I'm gonna say, not so positive characters. One of them is the sophomore. The sophomore is a Greek term, and y'all know what that means. It's your second year in high school, your second year in college. But the Greek term literally means wise fool. So the presumption is you got your second year in high school. You think you know it all. Nah, you got 2 more years to go, fam. You can't possibly know it all. The sophomore is the person that thinks they know more than they do. Now, that can be dangerous because a person could be trying to share information and it's misinformation. Or a person might be in a cipher with elders who've been there, done that, made mistakes, and can help them avoid making mistakes. But because they think they know it all, they don't listen to the people who have more knowledge or experience. Sophomores are they seem innocent, very dangerous to movements, very dangerous. They're kind of like your average. If you have a teenage child, then you know what a sophomore is. All teenagers think they know it all. You can't tell. Yeah, I know. You telling them so? Yeah, I know. They want to shut you up.
That's right.
They're the perfect. And I'm not banging on teenagers. That's just the way they are because of their stage of life, right? But you can't really tell them much. They think they got it figured out, and the people they listen to are the people in what their peer group, their age. So their realm of wisdom is going to be small because their peers are likewise as ignorant about life and things as they are. The young people that are stellar, that are exemplary, you're gonna find tend to be those that have relationships with older people, man. And going back to an earlier question that you asked me, the elders, man, I was able to, even if I didn't agree, I listened. I always listened to what they had to say. It's very important. Also you have the cheerleader. The cheerleader is the one that comes to the lecture. That's right. Teach, brother. Ashe. Right? Now, that's not bad. We need support. I know I do poetry. I'm a former MC. I publicly speak, and I feed off of the audience. So we want that. That's an Africanism, a cultural practice that we carried from Africa over here. That call and response. However, if the brother speaking is telling you, yeah, I need this money for this project and I want to do this, and you're like, that's right. Yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, we're gonna protect the people. Yeah, that's right. And I need all the 14-year-old girls to stay with me and they're gonna marry them. You're supposed to go, wait a minute.
Right.
You just took a left turn. We're not clapping for that.
Right.
We're not supporting that. So you be supportive, but critically supportive. Like we are with your kids. You support them, but you're critical. Right? You ain't gonna have your daughter talk about, yeah, dad, you said I should earn extra money, so I think I'm gonna quit high school and I'm gonna become a hooker. You're not gonna say, oh yeah, girl, but get that paper. You're gonna no, we're not doing that. That's not the way we're doing it. When I say get money, I didn't mean in any way. You're gonna be critically supportive. That means sometimes you gotta correct people. and redirect them. The cheerleader doesn't do that well. They're very impressionable, easily led, particularly if the person that's in front of them is sexy or cute. Forget about it. The poor cheerleader is lost. The sisters, oh, that brother's so fine. So he got them giving them money for a pipe dream that never materializes. He's a con artist. He has a record of being a con artist. They can't see it because they're caught up in his dashiki or his hairstyle, his muscles. And same with dudes. So the cheerleader is dangerous. Seems innocent, but they're dangerous because they allow things to go down that could have been prevented had they had the wisdom and courage to say, nah, I support you with that, but I'm not supporting that. I'm not supporting that. A brother can be strong without disrespecting and degrading sisters. So I support this brother, but that misogyny part, I don't support that. Right? Or, that type of thing. So they're dangerous in that way. We have also the cynic. Cynics are probably the most destructive. Cynics are people. Now, by the way, you have cynics and skeptics. I think it's healthy to be a skeptic. A skeptic evaluates things based on they're rational. They're like, I need to see some proof of that. What do you have evidence of that? A cynic, and if you can give them some evidence, or if they can research it, then they say, "Oh yeah, I'm down with that." They'll support. A cynic disagrees with everything. A cynic is a fault finder. A cynic has no love for the people, no love for the movement, no love for any organization. They exist. They have no independent program. They can't tell you what you should do. Their whole life is based on telling you that what you think is wrong, what you practice is wrong, and your organization's effort would never work. Obviously, they're dangerous because they tend to piss people off. They tend to make people not want to be around, not want to come to the meetings. They always, but here's the thing: they're always in the meeting. You would think if they're against everything, why are you coming to the meetings? Right? So it's almost like they're there to almost destabilize the movement or organization. They're the people that when King is talking about, yeah, I'm gonna get a march, I'm gonna have 250,000 people. They're like, man, you never gonna get 250, that type.
Yeah.
Malcolm X, they're always the naysayers to Malcolm. And I should add that many times older people, I'm gonna say who are like in their 70s and 80s now, who were 20 something in the 60s and 70s, will say, oh, I walked with Malcolm. I loved Malcolm. I need y'all to know something. A lot of people did not like Malcolm, did not support Malcolm when he was walking this earth. That's a fact. It's the same with Garvey. You had black intellectuals were writing letters to the government to deport Garvey. So we need to understand that King had a very low approval rating amongst most black people in the country. So we need to understand a lot of these people that we salute in their death. So unfortunately, some of us did not support them where we should have when they were alive, right? So that's the other thing. We have to be more skeptical. A person should not be able to come in front of you and say something that is absolutely backwards or reactionary, and you clapping for them just because you like the way they said it or they cute. That's ridiculous, right? You should be skeptical. You should demand some proof. They should make a good argument at least. But at the same time, you can't nitpick. You can't be a nitpicking type because the nitpicker starts with the assumption that what you're saying is wrong, what you're saying won't work, that you can't be trusted, and that's not fair to people. So that's an example of some of them, but those are some of the, I think, probably some of the more important ones.
Yeah, no, that's good. You talked a lot about the importance of elders and younger people being able to communicate with elders and learn from elders. You had a conversation recently with Brother Deruba bin Wahad, who is a name I feel most people don't know that they should know. So, can you tell us about the history of Brother Deruba bin Wahad in the conversation that you had with him?
Yes. Thank you for that question as well. Um, Baba, he would probably prefer Brother Deruba is nothing short. I mean, he is literally brilliant. I have to have to just say that. He's brilliant. Um, Brother Deruba bin Wahad began as a brother in the Bronx that got caught into trouble, was in at the juvie system, went to prison, whatever, got learned about Malcolm and nationalism and was turned on, was reading and reading and reading. Uh, he eventually joined the Black Panther Party in New York City. Now, the Black Panthers didn't come to New York until about 1968, which is 2 years after they started. You should also know that by 1971, the Panther Party divided, had factions. So in New York, if you joined in New York, you wasn't a Panther for too long because it only started in 68. And by 71, the New York City Panthers were part of the faction like, nah, we don't like the way it's going. They kind of felt it was becoming more, we're going to run for office, we're going to give out food, more social work, less revolutionary. So they had that divide. But Deruba was a field, I want to say a field marshal for the Panthers in New York. He was part of that infamous Panther 21 trial, as was Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mom. He was probably one of the best spokesmen in New York, along with Afeni Shakur. And when the movement, when the faction in New York decided this is not the Panthers that we signed up for, we need to go back to revolutionary, they went underground. And he is also the co-founder of the Black Liberation Army. And Will just said the Black Liberation Army did not picket, they didn't not march, they didn't ask police to get cameras and sensitivity training and all that. They retaliated against the police. And so naturally, anytime they could catch a BLA member and throw them away forever, they did. Deruba was imprisoned illegally, which means in this case that what they arrested him for, he did not do. He could not have done. He did 19 years in jail, so that makes him, they say political prisoner. Technically, he was a prisoner of war. He wasn't really a political, he's a prisoner of war because he's saying we're an army with Black Liberation Army, right? So when you capture opposing army, that's a prisoner of war. He did 19 years. While he's in jail, he finds out about this COINTELPRO, because they knew the Panthers, Black people were never stupid, family. We knew that the white man was doing stuff, right? Surveying us and all that, but we didn't have proof, but we knew. He finds this out. He does reading. He orders a report on himself. And on COINTELPRO, he gets 300,000 pages of information. And along with he and his lawyer, or maybe it might have been 30,000. And along with his lawyer, he finds, hey, wait a minute. They framed me. They had a Negro testify that I did something, and they coerced him to testify. It's a false testimony. He was released from prison after 19 years. He sued, I don't know if the corrections officer at NYPD got a settlement from them, and he hit the ground running. Since that time, he's been definitely out here working with other organizations in different parts of the world on behalf of Black liberation. And what's important about Deruba is that he brings a George Jackson hardcore revolutionary socialist capitalist critique of capitalism and class with that hardcore Black nationalist Black liberation sort of piece. So he brings a whole lot of important things together in one package. Some of you might remember back in the day when he got released around 1990. He was at 125th Street when Mandela came to Harlem, when he came to the U.S. tour, when he was freed from prison. He introduced Mandela. You might know him from being on the Phil Donahue show, and they had Sister Soldier and all these people on there. So Daruba is just brilliant. And I want to say this too. Daruba is now 76 or 79 years old. And he's suffering from stage 4 cancer. He has a number of issues with him. He's travels back and forth from the States to Africa for his treatments. And he shared with me that it was difficult for him to be able to afford all these treatments and travel. So we started Harlem Liberation School through me, but through Harlem Liberation School started a GoFundMe for him. And we're hoping that people will try to give something for a brother who has given, who basically, I won't say gave his life, but they tried to take his life on behalf of us. And I want you to understand, when I say that, I mean that literally. The Black Liberation Army was not out here getting petitions signed, family. It was a different time. They complained about police repression. They shot back. This is what we're talking about. So, of course, they were highly controversial. And people that sacrifice like that for us, we're gonna. It's only right that we sacrifice for them. I'll try to. I guess I'll post it in the chat. I don't know if you may be able to put it up at some point, but I really am hoping that people will contribute to our brother Daruba to his GoFundMe to help with his transportation and to help with his medical costs that he's incurring.
Yeah, put that up in the chat if you would. Now, I want to talk about your books and some of the work that you're doing, but there's one question I would like to put out there to you. There's a lot of groups on the internet. They present as if they're very pro-Black. Some of them are talking about reparations. Some of them are saying we should claim some different identity. And I find this to be very divisive. I feel perhaps like the hidden hand is at play here. What is your vantage point of some of these groups?
Oh, that's complicated. I think. Well, let me say this. I'm under no illusions that we will ever have a movement in which 100% of us is on one particular ideological plane. There are always going to be people who look at things differently. There's always going to be people who claim these kind of different sub identities. I don't think that's ever going away. But I do think, given that that's the case, and I think it's impractical to think that all Black nationalists are going to be one way. That's just not going to happen. That's in all this history, it's never been like that. But we can use that to advantage. We have some very important nation builders, Sister Elena Porter, but they're saying that we can have a nation configuration that's like a confederacy, where, for instance, the nationalists, the Pan-Africanists, the Moors, the different identities can be themselves, can believe what they believe, and be part of a confederation that works together, right? So some of them I know personally, and they're sincere and they're well read, well informed. We just me and them would disagree on certain things, but I love them and respect them because I know they're sincere, and I know what they're made of. That they give 100%. We're not going to agree on some things, but those I deal with. And then you have the group that's doing that are fraudulent, and those are the ones I don't support at all. They just out to get a check.
Understand? Yeah, basically. Now we want to transition into talking about some of your books. This is one here, "Truth for Our Youth," an empowerment book for teens. I think if you have children, or if you know someone that has children, you definitely should have this book in your collection because it is that important. You have a newer book on leadership. We want to plug that today. So what does that book entail exactly?
Leadership, philosophy, ethics, and practice. I think I have it right here. It's really just, yeah. You can see we got the faces of different leaders or figures in our movement and our history. It's really trying to give people a general idea of what leadership is, how leadership thinks, how leaders think and move differently from people who are not leaders, different frameworks or ways of looking at leadership, certain qualities, that good leaders have. It warns us against neo-colonial leaders, and it kind of helps people with specifics like developing protocol, um, how to vet people for your organization, and things of that nature. So it's a good general comprehensive book. I'm also going to be working. I'm working on two more books on leadership that approach it from different angles. But I think our leadership is very important in this whole thing. And one of the reasons we don't see the movement that some of us would like to see is because the leadership has been corrupted and co-opted. You know, we in the black community, well, not me and not you, but some of us are still hiring a certain reverend who we know, at least since 1980, has been an official, certified, documented snitch for the U.S. government. Tried to get Asada captured. Was tried to help the government catch some mobsters and all that. And yet we still call this man to come in when Pookie gets killed or Ray Ray gets killed to do the eulogy. And he'll tell you, man, 5,000, 10,000 to get me. So that tells me we're not going to move what we need to move because we're unwilling to be critical. This is what I mean. Unwilling to say, nah, you speak very well, like the hairdo, but nah, brother, you can't work with the enemy like that, and we trust you with our money and our people. You see, until we get over that, we're always going to meet resistance because on the other side, they got people that's willing to go all the way for them, and we need the same.
Yeah, you also have leadership training that you're marketing and promoting now. What does that involve exactly?
Yeah, I guess maybe two phases. One is, you've heard the term life coach. Um, I guess I might call it empowerment coaching, but I'm going to do something like that, targeting mostly people who are already in leadership positions or who aspire to be, to help them with the basics, how to be organized, how to set goals and reach them, how to communicate with people in a way that makes people want to work with you and doesn't push people away, um, how to bring out the leadership in other people, things like that. Um, this book I'm writing right now, actually, hopefully be finished by August, is going to give some kind of like I did for Too Far Youth, which was a self-empowerment book for teens. This will be a self-empowerment book for our adults in a similar fashion. And I'll have one coming out on leadership mistakes to avoid, and I have one called Becoming the Leaders We Seek that will have key leadership principles. So I'm trying to get those three books out so I can have a body of work around this issue of leadership.
Okay, I know you graduated from Syracuse University. Is that correct?
Yes,
Did your education contribute to some of what you understand now about leadership?
absolutely. Um, because I was the president of our Black Student Union, Student African American Society, for 2 years, and I was a student activist. We took over the university, took over buildings, held people hostage, did whatever we had to do in support of our Black Studies department. See, all this is connected, right? It wasn't just we wanted a bigger office. This is the center at a university. Your academic department is the capital, is everything at a university. So if you're looking at the Western history is decked out. They got everything they need. All these teachers. You looking at your joint, and you got 3 professors. They ain't got no assistants. They don't have students because they don't have enough professors to teach enough courses. The ceiling is falling. You got to say, yo, man, we got to do something about this. So that was our thing was you got to build up our Black Studies department and make it top notch, particularly since the administration made the commitment to my parents' generation in the 60s to do so. So yes, my activism started in college and continued from there, and I learned a lot along the way, a lot of good things, and mostly I've been successful because of the people I worked with and the teachers that taught me. You know, had help every step along the way. It wasn't just me, some genius guy myself. I had help. You know, I had people
Of
say,
course.
"Nah, brother, that's not how you do
You're right.
that." So yeah,
You
definitely.
mentioned you
And
mentioned
then
the, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And then after Syracuse, I went to Cornell University for the Africana Studies and Research Center. So I got a master's degree in Africana Studies. So all of my education has been around, pretty much been around our history, culture, and politics. So
Mhm.
that's my college education was meant to infiltrate, not to integrate. It was meant to
Got it.
get the information, come back to the hood and our people, and use it against our enemy, not to become one with the enemy,
Yeah,
so to
yeah.
speak.
We need to see more of that. You mentioned the books, and you have some forthcoming books. How can a person buy the books if they want to go ahead and make those purchases?
Man, I would say if everybody could see my name right there, type my name in, and it'll come right up. I have a link tree as well, but if you type my name in, you'll come up in the first few pages that you'll get. You come right into the books, our YouTube channel, and the different projects we're working on.
All right, and what is the YouTube channel for those that may not be aware?
Harlem Liberation School.
Harlem Liberation School, and there's a website also, harlemliberationschool.com. Rescue me if I'm wrong.
No,
No.
I would have to, but if you go to Harlem Liberation School, that will come right up too. Probably
Okay.
in the first three things that you type in.
Okay, so people, put the name Agyei Tyehimba in the search, and you'll find them. If you put Harlem Liberation School in the search, you'll find them. And go on YouTube and put Harlem Liberation School in the search on YouTube as well, and you will find them. Quick question before we go: the YouTube channel. You might want to plug that. What are some of the forthcoming topics that you're going to discuss on the YouTube channel? Because I always find it to be very interesting.
Well, we definitely want to hit hard on nationalism. What we're trying to do is help people understand that we can't just repeat what our ancestors said. We can't just sloganize our struggle. We have to interrogate it. We have to say, to what degree is this relevant? To what degree do we have to keep what they're saying but tweak it for a different time and place? What other new things do we have to add to the struggle? How do we take a role in the struggle so that our grandchildren aren't just quoting what Garvey and Malcolm X said, they're quoting what we said and did. Like, how do we take a role, an active role in the movement?
Yeah,
So
I
we're going
like
to
that.
be hitting a lot on those type of things. And by
Okay,
the way, the books, if you go to Amazon and type my name in, it's the same thing. The books will come up as well. All the
okay,
books.
okay. And is there an email address in case people want to reach out to you for the leadership training, the empowerment training?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna see if I can. That's True Self 143 at Gmail.
Okay,
Let
and
me
True
see
is
that.
TRU, right?
Oh wait.
We're on live with Brother Agyei Tyehimba.
And
Okay, so I see it now. True TRU self SELF 143 at gmail.com. That's true self.
hopefully you should see it at the
No, I
bottom
see it.
there.
I see it. True self TRUSELF 143 at gmail.com. I say if you're
I
watching
see
this and you're
you got
interested,
somebody from Holland on here, man.
how we got a shout out from Holland. Yeah, salute to them.
I
Salute
can't
to
hear
them.
you.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Hmm.
Can you hear me now? I think we lost him. All right. That was Brother Agyei Tyehimba. Hopefully, I'm still being heard. Can
That's
you hear me
weird.
now?
All of a sudden I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. Wow, we just lost contact somehow. I don't know how that happened, but either way,
All right, I'm gonna take these off. Hold on 1 second, good brother.
we're about to wrap in 60
Okay,
seconds.
yeah, I hear you now.
You hear me now? Okay, okay. Okay, got it, got it. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. We lost
I think
contact.
my Bluetooth headphones powered out. They
Oh,
died,
okay.
I think.
See, such is life in the digital age, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, brother Ajay, we're going to go ahead and get off of here. I want to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to bringing you back again next month, first Monday of the month, if you can avail us in your schedule.
No doubt, man. Definitely look forward to it. Thank you for considering me, and peace and black power to the family watching.
Most def. Stay safe, brother, and stay Pan African.
Yes, sir.
All right, peace.
Peace.